Super special episode today, and before we get into it, we have something special to unveil as well. New room in the house for you to come experience as a client. Beautiful whiskeys, of course, to drink, which we always share, but really the updated luxury music system for you to come and enjoy when you're building your own and get a taste of what some of the best stuff out there sounds like. We're going to talk a lot about cables, a lot about power today, but there's a lot of action here to do at the house. If you do get a chance to visit the house by appointment only, make sure you schedule with your technologist or myself to get a great music system demo or a theater demo, or of course one of our many options of automation throughout the entire home. Thank you. Welcome to another episode of the Artisan Series with Architecna. Today, and I've said this before, but today really is a special day. With us, we have a special human being that I never thought would be sitting in this room, but today is. We'll get to that in a second. We're going to cover a ton of things today, but primarily, you spent a lot of money on your audio gear. You spent a lot of money on your acoustic treatments. You worked with your designer and your sales guy over the last several years, upgrading your system, but it still sounds horrible and it sucks. So we're going to cover why that is today. And of course, we're going to do some fun things with pinball. It's the only thing we could think of that has some type of mechanical engineering aspect to it for our guests today. Another thing that's special about today's episode is there's actually going to be two versions. So if you're like me and you only have a few minutes to scan through and hear some of the sound bites or the pinball machines that we're playing, whatever it is that you want to be, great, that's the theatrical release. But we're also, for those of you that really want to understand how this stuff works, because it's extremely complex, and if you really want to understand the value of what they provide at AudioQuest, there is going to be a director's cut. It'll be double the length, but I promise by the time you're done with that version, you will know exponentially more about how power works and how their cabling works and why it does what it does to your system. And with me today is none other than Garth Powell from AudioQuest. I would say I've called him Wizards of Wires and things like that online, but he is, I would say, one of the most appreciated known engineers in the audio industry that's out there and about, that's protecting our equipment, making it sound the best that it possibly can. And he backs it with other information besides snake oil, which of course you'll hear that term all over the place and probably in our comments as this episode goes on. But I assure you, by the time this episode is done, you will not be in that camp any other. Without further ado, Garth, tell us a little bit about your background, why you're here with us today, and thanks for being with the Artisans at Architecna.
Well, thank you so very much for having me. So background, I've been with AudioQuest now for just about 12 years. Prior to that, I was with a company called Firm & Sound for 16 years. And, essentially in the audio video business, particularly high performance or high-end audio, since I was 17 years old. Went to my first high-end salon at age 15, rode my bicycle, took all my savings from 3 part-time jobs to get a small integrated amp to go with some Jensen loudspeakers I already had. And, for whatever reason, I think it was midsummer, it was a little slow that day. And I was this precocious, like I'm a young kid, I'm far too many questions and so forth. And they thought I was amusing and took pity on me and brought me back to their back room and, explained that you can't just sit anywhere. You need to sit right in the middle here. And they dimmed the lights and so forth. And it's the late 1970s, so they put the needle down on the record. And they ruined me for the rest of my life. I was completely swept up in this and just enjoyed the next 5 to 10 minutes so much. And after that, I just came back to earth and realized, what does this cost? And they gave me a number and I thought, okay, I've got 3 part-time jobs and an allowance. I should be able to afford this by age 35. So that wasn't going to work. So basically, what I did was I figured out how can I become an employee there. I became their technician by the next year.
I have been on the record saying in multiple scenarios, multiple times with different vendors and also different people that we work with, that your cable line that you came out with is hands down the best cables I've ever heard. And that's not because you're sitting here. I've said this when you're not around. I've said this to other manufacturers, and of course they scoff at me and get upset and things like that. But this is one of the reasons why Architecna leads with AudioQuest when we're doing luxury systems or high-end audio systems, and we don't sell another wire. If we're doing pre-wiring of a home and things like that, of course we do ice cable, which they make a fantastic wire as well for what they're trying to accomplish. So I think what we need to do though is make sure that the audience understands why the cables that we have and what you've designed and AudioQuest has manufactured are what they are. And so, and aside from that, of course, the different power pieces that you've engineered and dare I say invented. So the segments today, and we'll cover some of these things. Common hidden noise problems in the home. This is something you've been talking about since Furman, and this is something that's going to be an easy story for you to cover, but they're all over the place, and I don't think even till this day, people really understand how bad noise is, and especially with all the new Wi-Fi technology, cell phone towers, and the robust, and they keep growing, and how bad those things are for their equipment, and how high-end quality cables make a difference. Why do all the new mythological creatures in down? Why do they change the sound of a system? Or do they change it, or they just make it better, or they just eliminate some of the stuff that other cables put in? Obviously, we're going to discuss power conditioning and transient peak things. Of course, we have a Niagara 5000 behind us. Ground noise, why that matters. And then at the very end of it, too, the components protect your audio gear from surges, spikes, dips, things like that, or brown. So we'll cover that as well. And in all of this, we'll be doing what I think would be fun for you. You tell me if we're halfway through it, you want to do something else, you just want to start drinking whiskey instead. My thought is hey, you've been playing in the world of engineering your whole life. You'd probably get a kick out of playing some what I think are technological marvels, or what they call worlds under glass, which is pinball. Are you a pinball player at all, or is this something you've never done?
When I was younger.
Awesome. Well, we'll get 3 to 5 machines in, and you give me your score. I'll give you mine. We've got a few up here, and then
mine's gonna be pathetic.
Well, no. You're gonna give a rating on how fun the machine is.
Okay.
We're not gonna compare in pinball. We don't want to do that. It'd be like me and you comparing and me understanding how you design your cables.
Yes,
we don't want to do that either.
Very good. I'm not the pinball king.
You're not a pinball wizard.
No, exactly.
So with that being said, we've got a couple of them up here, and we've got some down in the other room as well. So I think you have a lot of options to choose from. I think you'll have a good time. All right, let's get to the first topic, Garth.
All right.
Uncovering hidden noise problems. I'm not going to rifle off a bunch of questions here for you. You're pretty familiar with this topic, but how does noise from power affect the sound of audio gear? Let's start with that.
So the thing is that it doesn't matter if it's from power or if it's from induced radio frequency noise that's in our atmosphere and is ever present, always there. Doesn't matter where you are. People want to imagine all kinds of things. Oh yeah, Garth, I know I have bad power because I have, essentially seen my lights blink occasionally when the amplifiers turn on. No, that's inrush. That's going to be fixed in basically 2 seconds of the things being turned on. I suspect I have bad power because I live at the end of the power line. I suspect I have bad power because I'm in a big, metropolitan city. The fact of the matter is that worldwide, nobody has power that's good enough for the level of sophistication that we're subjecting them to with a great audio or video system. It's just, and to be fair, it's not the utility's fault. It was never meant for this. Those were meant for electric lights. Those were meant for simple appliances with an AC motor. They were not meant for what we're trying to do with them now. But it would be a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure change to try to make power that's up to the level of what we're trying to do with it. So it's on us, the component manufacturers with their power supplies and their upgradable power supplies and power conditioning, cables, isolation, everything we can do to lower noise matters because it's ever present and it's always there. When we're talking about this type of noise, I'm talking about an insidious type of noise that's omnipresent, always there, but here's the trick. Here's the rub. You're never aware it's there until you experience it vastly reduced or taken away. And why do you care about minimizing it, lowering it, or taking it away. You care about that because it is modulating, mixing with, modulating is just a fancy engineering term for mixing with and corrupting your primary low-level signal. And when it does this, it creates what's called a masking effect. And you end up with this. And I don't want this, I want this. So how do we get there? That's the idea.
Well, my question is, because based out of several manufacturers, that not only that we carry, but that are out there, we have these giant monoblocks or 2-channel amplifiers, and we do not ever want our stuff plugged into a line conditioner or a power center or a power plant or whatever you may be. We got to go direct into wall. And so what do you say to those people?
That they're right.
Okay, tell me more.
Because they're professionals. They care deeply about what they worked so damn hard to create, and they listen carefully, and they've already had, through the decades, a lot of really bad experiences plugging their power amplifiers into various power regenerators, power conditioners, power distributors, whatever you want to call it, various technologies, multiple brands, and they found them wanting into their power amplifiers. Now, it seems like...
I'm sorry, I'm not to cut you out there. I want to tell you, I've got 2 pretty high power amplifiers plugged into one Niagara 5000.
I know.
Am I doing this wrong?
No, you're not.
Okay.
Here's the thing. They're right in terms of what they know and what they've experienced. The thing is that not everybody that deals with power deals with it in the same way. I, essentially got started, with power, well over 25 years ago in a professional sense, not just making power supplies and very basic filters for other designs that I've been doing for years and years and years before that. And coming out of technical school, I would have kind of thought, and what I was always taught was that if you do your job and you build a really good power supply for whatever component it is, whether it's an amplifier, a DAC, whether it's a preamplifier, phono preamplifier, equalizer, that should be good enough. And you can hook it up to a scope, and with some very simple tests, it will show you that your noise and your rejection is very good, and I'm done. Just not a problem. The problem is that those simple tests don't show everything that's really there. They never did, and less so today. But I didn't understand all of this. And the thing is that their amplifier is still subject to noise. It's still having certain problems. But the thing about a power amplifier, unlike every other component, is it needs to be able to deliver a great deal of transient current to the loudspeaker in order to control it and give you all that dynamic impact and everything that you need for every transient. And the problem is going to be, they're up against physics. If you do something in a power, like a supply box, whatever the technology is, that's between the current delivery system of your utility power to its own power supply, that raises what's called impedance, you're going to impede the flow of that instantaneous current, and you're going to do something that they are scared to death of, current compression. So we have to guard against that. And most of these traditional designs, no matter what the topology or technology, they've all had this issue. I realized this years ago when I tried, like at Furman, some of the very, very best power conditioners and power regenerators that we had to offer, and on my system found them failing. I experienced the same thing these amplifier manufacturers did. All of a sudden, like the dynamics went away. All of a sudden my bass was anemic. Oh, what's going on? This isn't right. And when I started really, looking at what the complex problems were, I realized where we had failed. But that failure is an opportunity. So from there, I developed, a transient power correction. At that time, I was calling it transient power factor. This is based on a technology that's been around since the 1920s. This is not airy-fairy. This is not snake oil. This is just basic physics. It's how to deal with lowering the transient impedance going to the power supply of said amplifier so that we give it a current reservoir up to about 25 milliseconds when that audio transient hits and it needs it. Now, the steady state, what's called root mean squared RMS power on a decent receiver is going to be fine. If we could promise to only play sine tones, if we would only listen to pipe organ music, we're good to go. But the thing is that that's not really what's going to happen. So every time that there's a transient from any instrument, or like explosion, or anything impactful in any kind of theater presentation, no, we could be pulling from our wall 20 amps peak, 40 amps peak, 60 amps peak, and we've got to make sure that we're not only not impeding that, but if we could we actually have another power supply at the ready to help it do that more efficiently, more effectively. This is into a conventional outlet. Then into the Niagara 5000. So what that translates into is that none of us have ever heard coming out of our audio systems, coming through. That's just the detector and the way it voices that. But basically, what you're talking about is likely 1,000 times differential, and the difference, and what that's going to translate to is all of that valuable harmonic structure, everything that's, the imaging, all the extreme highs, everything that makes audio sound real. You have coming just from conventional power, this masking effect that's happening when that modulates your signal. Here, we can reduce that greatly. Sometimes we can't get rid of it entirely, but we can reduce it enough to where you're going to get the performance that you paid for.
How else does the Niagara series and some of the PowerQuest stuff benefit a client's hi-fi system?
Lowering the induced noise. That would really be the main thing, because the thing is that power amplifiers are unique. They're the only thing in an audio system with variable current. Everything else is a fixed, stable current. So they don't worry about, like an impedance or how much current, flow is being restricted. There's no such thing as current compression going to a preamplifier or a DAC. But when it comes to induced noise, they matter greatly. And also, an amplifier is the highest level, which means that it is, even though it's essentially going to be affected by induced noise, it's going to be affected by induced noise the least, because the volume has cascaded up the highest in the system. The lower the, the signal level, the more it's going to matter. The beginning of the digital journey, the beginning of, say, a turntable or the phono journey in particular is extraordinarily low. And in a situation like that, you can have a, very, very wide dynamic range that you're trying to reproduce. The best electronics are capable of this, but at the very, very, very bottom of that volume shift or dynamic range, you need to make sure that there's no noise there, and there always will be some. That's that masking effect I talked about earlier that we want to get rid of or reduce as much as possible. Now, when we talk about low level, what the hell's Garth talking about? The reason you care about that is that if we were to compare a factory bottom of the line car stereo with the system that we have behind us, or any other premium system, and we were just listening to a pop recording that was optimized for Bluetooth earbuds, something I might really enjoy, like Amy Winehouse, Back to Black or something like that, but it's been slam limited with 3 dB of dynamic range. The difference between those two systems is it's audible, but it's minimal. But with most recordings, particularly ones with full dynamic range, full bandwidth, well, what's going to happen there is the imaging, the three-dimensionality, the realness of everything, my ability to tell, oh, that's a Hamburg Steinway. No, that's a Yamaha piano. That's a Suzuki or Roth student violin. No, that's a Winari. That's a Stradivarius. That's an Amati. Our ability to tell that, when we can hear those things, it's because we have been all capable. We don't need to be professional musicians. We don't have to be audiophiles. Everybody has the hearing to be able to tell, that sounds different to me. That impacts me in a certain way that I am not so impacted by that other. How are we hearing that? It's very quiet, very low signal levels where those rich harmonics are coming through. we almost tune out the loud stuff as noise. We, like of a different type, we concentrate and focus on the details, and those details are low in level. That's what defines the best of audio and video production. And those components were made to do it. Man, they're capable. But if induced noise gets in and modulates that so valuable system that makes everything so real and palpable, we get this. And again, we can't have that. We can't.
And sometimes too, you're making a great example so people understand your point. But there's a lot of times too on systems that aren't, I would say, managed appropriately. It's not as dramatic as that, but something just doesn't sound right. It doesn't seem real. You know what I mean? So there are components that I've heard really high-end systems that it's very two-dimensional. It's flat. The instruments don't have that sound around them that create that reality. It's definitely not convincing my brain that there's a live musician or a live ensemble in front of me. Whereas the best systems out there, coupled with your equipment, do. Then before we get into our next segment, let's go get our pinball machine on. Let's go get our pinball wizard on, if you will. So the first pinball that's going to be up is going to be Guns N' Roses. Second one's going to be Elton John. Third is going to be Weird Al Yankovic. Let's go. The 10 scale. Now this is the first one that you've played in a long time. Yeah. 10 being, this is the most magnificent thing I played since whatever. My drum set last night, or 1 is like, not a fan of Guns N' Roses. Whatever. What do you give it?
I'm going to give it a 8.
That's pretty high. I thought that. I'm going to give Guns N' Roses, knowing what's in front of us currently today, I'm going to go 7.2. My favorite part of the interview is going to be this, because I'm very passionate about your guys' cable line. So high quality cables, do they make a difference? And do all cables work the same in the worlds of premium? And do they just improve the sound? Or what is your take on why your cables are special?
There's a way in which a lot of the premium cables that exist, I mean, not something that you'd get from Amazon for a very, very low price, but if you're talking about a premium cable, actually the thing is, I would basically congratulate and salute most of our competitors, because, at this far into the 21st century, they're all aware that induced noise is a problem. Okay. So they're all dealing with that. They're all aware that the quality of the conductors, that's the engine of your cable, is going to make a great deal of, impact. That is going to have a lot to do with the overall low-level distortion, in the cable that's going to impart that to the rest of the system. So that's something that we're all looking at, and different types of topology to make sure that the bandwidth that is delivered is as low in distortion as possible. Everybody has a different way of going about this. I wouldn't want this any other way. But I think that they're all very, very sincere in their approach, and the fact that they're using usually good sound science, and that they're listening, reasonably well. But yet, to your broader point, what's different about us? I think maybe less to do with, we have perfect surface copper plus, we have perfect surface silver. They have they have Ono, or they have a different type of a high purity copper with 6 nines of purity. We have this type of dielectric, they have this type of dielectric, and so forth. And we can just get lost in the weeds with this. But what's it ultimately mean to the end result? And the thing with everything that I design, whether it's an amplifier circuit, whether it's a crossover circuit, whether it's a cable, or whether it's power, it's an engineering term called linearity. And that's just a fancy term for even as possible, as consistent as possible. Why is consistent necessary? Because you can very easily take a very, very good idea in science, and in the science of audio and video reproduction, and in your circuit, in your design, find that when I try this idea, with this technology, I can measure or I can detect and hear, wow, this one area really got better. Wow, listen to the sterling highs that I'm getting. Listen to what we've done to the bass. This is really incredible. Listen to the liquid mid-range that we've managed to create. Well, those are all wonderful things. I like bass, I like mids, and I like highs. And what I really like is when they're all used together and they're all correct, and I didn't impart my personality on them. Anything that you do has to work at every volume level, on every system, on every component, to the greatest extent you possibly can. Again, it comes down to putting no personality on everything, getting out of the way, and what do I have to do to impart the greatest resolution back.
What is the jump from the previous generation to what you introduced when you came on board with AudioQuest? What is this cable doing differently than my previous set of K2s?
So the whole thing was looking at a number of things to do with our noise dissipation systems and things. So there were a number of refinements there, but maybe one of the single largest differences in the interconnects, audio interconnects, the speaker cables and the power cables was dealing with what's called characteristic impedance. We have a technology we call zero tech. It doesn't mean zero resistance. It doesn't mean zero loss. There's no such thing. We live on planet Earth. That's not possible. The thing about having a cable that's going to inherently have, every cable is going to have some sort of characteristic impedance, whether it's labeled or not. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with the fact that most of our audio video components are going to go from a very, very mismatched impedance. It's very, very low to very high. In fact, there's a lot of technological reasons why that's an advantage for them. The problem is that that cable now has nothing to do with what the component that's, that's sending the signal and the one that's receiving the signal ultimately do or want to see. So it's interfering. That's why that's an issue. And it's doing so in a nonlinear, again, that fancy word, inconsistent way, in terms of the way it deals with induced noise, in trying to dissipate that said noise, and the way it's trying to essentially carry that signal with the lowest distortion, with the least loss possible. That's where we care. So if I can get rid of that problem, I've created something that's much closer to our ideal. What's our ideal? No cable. What's our ideal? Do no harm, least possible. And something that has a zero tech design is effectively, where characteristic impedance is concerned, essentially equivalent to using about a 1-inch cable.
All right, I don't want to put you on the spot because I don't even know how you're going to answer this, but what's your hot take? We do this with all of our guests.
Hot take. At audiophile shows and in dealers, stop playing the same 10 audiophile tracks. We are in the music business. Play music. Expose your customers and yourselves to everything. I go to a lot of audio shows, but I'm also, again, when I'm not wearing my engineering cap, I'm a professional musician. I can't tell you how much I appreciate, dealer rooms in particular, when they're spinning interesting music all day and it's clear that they're music lovers first, audiophiles second.
It's time to go to pinball machine number 2. This is their latest music pin, and they work directly with Sir Elton on the design of this. And so this is ranked right now this is ranked like number 30 or 40th in the world on all pinball machines. This is like in top 10 right now. So we'll see how it plays. You got a lot of fun in this. It's a faster shooter. It's an easier shooter than this, and it's very straightforward with what you want to do.
Okay.
1 through 10.
Okay. See, one of my pinballs got stuck on this one, so I'm going to have to give it a 7.
So I think this is one of the best shooting pinball machines on the planet Earth. I'm going to give it a 9.5. Whether you're watching the theatrical release or the director's cut, if you're liking this content, please like, subscribe, share, do all the bells and whistles and all the different content things, whatever these guys are telling me. They'll all pop up on the screen. Whatever you guys do. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Role of power conditioning. We've touched on some of these topics already, but I want to make sure we hit it home. So what is dirty power? Bluetooth, cell phone towers, things like that. And then in the world of our cabling or your cabling and power conditioners with the Niagaras and down, how can they eliminate those things that people are dealing with every day and they don't even know the type of chaos there is being havocked and created on their systems?
Well, again, it's just a matter that the noise is going to be ever present. You can't entirely eliminate it, but you need to eliminate as much as you possibly can. You need to do it as consistently and evenly as you can.
Okay.
Doesn't matter if it's a cable, doesn't matter if it's a power, and for that matter, even things that we don't make. This is true for all the rest of the component manufacturers as well. And if you talk to most of them, everybody's aware of this in various sundry degrees. So within your particular area, this is what you need to do in order to maximize performance in this day and age.
Moving on to number 4, why ground noise matters. What is ground noise and how can it cause fuzzy or unclear sound?
Well, the thing is that there's 3 different types of noise that can occur, certainly on an AC line, and then of course ground noise also exists all the way through an audio system. So, but basically for power, you would have your line, you'd have your neutral, and then you'd have ground. But the ground was originally created around the world for people's AC lines, essentially as redundancy safety, to help prevent electrocution and help reduce instances of fire.
Okay.
But also it has another great advantage, and this is something that everybody in the broadcast industry has known long before there was any kind of rule that you needed to have that redundancy ground. Well, they were already doing it because it is your drain for induced noise, because you will never eliminate all the noise. So what you can't eliminate, you drain back to earth. And this is why earth is maybe, and therefore grounding, proper grounding, is possibly the single most important thing you'll ever do in a system. I like to tell everybody, what's the most important cable in an entire system? Is it the speaker cable? Is it the interconnect cable? Is it your digital cable if you're running streaming, like CDs and DVDs and so forth? Which cable is it? It is the single power cable that's feeding a Niagara. Why? Because that's your primary return to earth.
If your wires that you're using on your audio system do not cost at least as much as your car, you're doing it wrong.
Cable's costing more than your car. Well, the thing is that it depends. Everybody values something differently, but in my particular instance, I drive, like a Kia Soul DT, and I need room for all of my drums and percussion for my other portion of my blended career. But the thing that I can tell you is I enjoy music and music reproduction way more than my Kia. Sorry, Kia.
Pinball number 3, here we go. Weird Al Yankovic on one of the most high-tech pinball machines today. Surprisingly, Garth is his fan favorite is Guns N' Roses right now. We'll see what Weird Al does for him. What are your thoughts?
Okay, well, see, this one doesn't have, like a little sprung ball plunger. So I'm going to give it a 6 just because I'm a traditionalist.
Because I know what the machine is capable of. This isn't fair. This game, I'd probably go with you on a 6, but I'm going to give this one an 8.5. Okay, so this last segment, we had a lot of stuff we were discussing, surge protection, a couple of other components, but we're gonna go through and kind of just make sure you get the right tips. So when you're doing some shopping, you're discussing your audio system with your dealer or with us, which you should be, you're asking the right questions, you're equipped with the right knowledge. We're gonna touch on surge protection and a couple of other things that are near and dear to your heart to make sure that people can make their personalized choices with their audio system, which I think is an intimate choice, they can make it effectively and they can do it correctly.
Okay. I would say that surge suppression in our power conditioning line is the bonus. Performance always has to come first. And one of the things that I applaud most of our competitors for is the fact that within their technologies and their technological and financial constraints, they have definitely paid attention to that and done their level best. You know, our products are different and so forth. I believe that we can, in fact, I can prove we, can yield more resolution from a system given our technologies for a given price point pretty consistently. But but they do the job. One of the things that I noticed though is that if you're out just buying a $20 or $30 AC power bar or strip, the whole pitch is protection, surge protection.
Right.
But
up to $1 billion.
Exactly. But ironically, that you'll never get. But but it looks good on the package. But at any rate, but ironically, particularly in the high performance world, the more money you spend, the less that becomes the pitch. And in a way, I think that that's right, because performance needs to be the first story. That needs to be the lead. However, surge protection still matters actually, for not the fact that everybody lives in a lightning prone area or that everybody is going to watch their investment in tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of audio video gear go up in smoke. That's realistically, statistically not going to happen. But here's what people don't get about all of this. And that is the fact that most of these surge suppressors are sacrificial, and they also, here's the other part that they'll never talk about, is that they actually adversely affect the audio performance. This is, and add noise of their own. This is why a lot of premium ones have very little protection, and a lot of them have none. Because they've listened to every component, they've listened to every circuit, and they've realized, oh, that sounds nasty, I'm getting rid of that. But our idea is like, no, I want, works every time, set it and forget it, 100% no fail surge protection, and I want to make sure that it has no effect on my audio and video quality. That's hard to pull off, but I've spent my whole career doing it, and you have to have a lot of experience there to know what the pitfalls are so you can get rid of those.
What is the product that you would recommend to the people that need a nice tightly mounted TV, or of course to not have something ugly looking with their projector mount?
We have actually something coming out next year, but in the meantime, just running a power cord from anything from our PowerQuest series.
What's the smallest one?
The PowerQuest, currently there'll be something much smaller that's about the size of a VH tape that's coming next year. But until that one's ready, a PQ2 or a PQ303. Actually, here's the thing. From the PQ2 all the way up to the Niagara 7000, it's non-sacrificial surge. Set it and forget it. As you move up in price, the only thing that changes is not the quality of the protection, but the quality of the audio. The more money I have to spend on that circuit, the more I can make it sonically non-invasive.
That's excellent information. And of course, as soon as that releases next year, we'll make sure Andrew gets one for his TV that he just bought from us. But
it's going to be called the PowerQuest TV3.
Oh, awesome. There it is. You heard it here first. Quick recap of everything that we covered today. Of course, the common hidden noise issues that we all experience day to day, especially with high quality and high fidelity instruments. Do high quality cables make a difference? I think we solved that and talked about that today. Obviously, power conditioning. Ground noise is a big topic today, Garth, which we covered, and why that matters. And of course, protecting the audio gear and a couple of other little tidbits in there as well, which some of the stuff that you just showered on me, I didn't know as well. AudioQuest. You've already given away something that's coming next year. Is there anything else that you want to cover or say before we part ways for this particular segment?
The only thing that I would really say is that anything in an audio video system is important. Absolutely everything it needs to be paid scrupulous attention to. Anything that you would upgrade throughout time or throughout the years or something like that is a worthwhile process. You're just in the pursuit of re-engaging yourself, with your system, with your movies, with your cinema, with your videos, or with your music. However, the thing that I would caution one about is that if you're really going to build a great system, it's foundational. So your room is foundational, your electricity is foundational, a lot of the the stands and so forth, and but the structures that the components are going to sit on are somewhat foundational, and certainly power is foundational. Now, whether it's talking about power conditioning or regeneration, or whether you're talking about cables, it's considered to be an accessory. But the thing is that it's really not. It's more of a foundational product. Because the thing is that if you were to look at throughout the years to upgrade, because technology is always changing. If you want to get better speakers, good. I applaud you. It's great. Better amplifier, better DAC. Whatever it is you want to upgrade to, you'll hear all of that. But the thing is that when you do that, if the foundation isn't right, if the power in particular isn't right, you'll be getting more of the signal that's left over. Because once you lose signal, you'll never retrieve it again. Your power, basically electrically, your system starts at the power. Once you lose that low-level information to the noise masking and distortion, you'll never get it back. All you'll do is get more out of whatever signal is left over.
I think that's well said, Garth, and I really appreciate you sharing that with us. For everybody else at home, again, 2 versions. If you watch the short one, if you watch the theatrical release, don't forget, if you got some time on your hands, having this playing in the background will not hurt your brain, I promise. Subscribe, comment, like, share, bell, whistle. What is there? There's other things, whatever you do. Make sure you follow us on Instagram as well. Subscribers are growing. Thank you so much for our loyal base, and we'll see you next time.